All right. So my take on the whole JonTron Ukulele controversy. Let's lay the groundwork real quick. JonTron is a YouTuber, very popular one who has recently started to kind of say some things from the alt-right perspective, I guess. Just kind of freaking people out. He was going to be a voice actor on a game called Yooka-Laylee by Playtonic, which is coming out really soon. And Playtonic dropped him after some very controversial remarks he made in a debate with a Twitch streamer named Destiny, or online named Destiny. I have no dog in this fight, really. I don't want to judge anybody for what they have said without more context, but I do want to kind of talk about it a little bit. In terms of what Playtonic has done, I think it is a perfectly rational and smart business decision. This is not a free speech issue. Free speech is the ability to say anything you want without being arrested and sent to jail for it. That's it. Playtonic has a right to distance themselves from people who would endanger their financial well-being as a business. So this is a matter of business. Is it the right decision? I'm not sitting there at the Playtonic Studios working this out, but they think it is, and that's good enough for me. Certainly, even on Twitter, JonTron has said he understands their decision, and it is a very understandable one. So before you get really outraged about it, just think about, if you had a business, your priority, your prime directive is taking care of your business, preserving the integrity of your game, making sure that your employees have jobs, thinking about the bottom line. And this is a question of the bottom line. In terms of what JonTron said, he talked a lot about immigration. He talked about things like preserving a white demographic majority. He talked about a lot of things that I find pretty repulsive. But I don't want to leap to conclusions like JonTron is a all-out racist. I think that there's a lot of stuff going on right now, and a lot of people who don't know very much about politics are getting involved in politics to the detriment of their own reputation. And it's just, I think politics have gotten so crazy, and they're so ubiquitous right now, even in games, and with Gamergate and with other things. I feel like there was this sort of huge divide created along sort of blurry political lines. So I watched a Boogie video about all this, and I think he had some really good things to say. And one of the things that he said was that, maybe JonTron is trying on different hats. He knows the guy and is friends with him, and I don't. So I think this is a good observation, right? And we all try on lots of hats in our lives. We try out different political beliefs. We try out different religious beliefs. We try out different substances. We try different jobs, hobbies, everything else. With political beliefs or religious beliefs or some of these more like touchy, controversial things, most people have the luxury of just sort of trying them out in the privacy of their own home, with friends at a bar or whatever. The problem with doing it in a major stream when you have millions of followers is that what might be a perfectly fine little debate to have with people who you trust and who can maybe steer you through an honest conversation, that becomes the matter of public record, and suddenly it can affect your reputation and your career. It's from my perspective, this was not the sort of thing that he should have been doing until he had a more coherent political philosophy to work with. And to get there, it is good to have debates. It is good to talk with people. It's good to read books. It's good to, read your history. Because there's a lot of stuff, when it comes to preserving a white demographic majority that's really scary. And it's something that, if you're thinking along those lines, hopefully you can talk to people who can get you to think more deeply about it, because it's not just a harmless thought. It's the kind of thought that's caused all sorts of shitty things to happen, all kinds of really bad things to happen. This idea that we need to preserve a racial group at the expense of other groups, typically. Whether that's an immigration debate or whether that's something that's led to war or, just look at slavery, look at the Holocaust, look at all these things where race and preserving racial demographic majority have led to death and pain and suffering. Look at Rwanda and what happened there based on tribal, just different. It's a racial issue with the Hutus and Tutsis. Can't even talk. But history has a lot of examples of why this is a dangerous way of thinking. And if you want to explore that line of thinking, if you want to explore that, that's fine. But do it carefully. Don't do it publicly right away unless you're willing to face the consequences. And consequences for free speech are just like this. You lose a book deal, or you lose your voice acting gig in this. They're not like dire. No one's being marched off to the gulags, but this is something to consider. I understand, I think, where some of this angst comes from. This idea that white people are put upon, white men in particular have become, discriminated against. I get where this comes from. It's very much an online phenomenon, because you see there's so many people with radical ideas and with a very strident way of getting those ideas across. I have had very humorless and scary interactions with some people on the left, over topics like feminism. And, being a white man can immediately get you chased off the scene with a number of groups and people. And that sucks. But it doesn't suck on the same, level as some of the structural issues that face minorities in this country, like higher rates of incarceration, things like the war on drugs, and police brutality, or things that happen, like immigrant families who have a kid in the United States, and there's always that threat that the parents are going to be deported and the kid will be here. Or, there's so many things facing minorities in this country. It's hard for me to get worked up about the plight of white men, even if I think it's kind of shitty how some people, deal with a lot of white men are perfectly fine people. Just because you're white and male doesn't mean you're going to be a shithead. You can be a shithead no matter what color or gender you are. So that defensiveness, it's understandable, but it's not helpful. I think it's important to sort of sift through priorities, sift through what's important in a discussion, and question your own questions. Why is it so offensive that people would want to preserve a white demographic majority? It's offensive because of what it implies, the sort of actions, the necessities that would imply. I guess I'm just a freedom lover because I don't believe in clamping down on people's ability to migrate. I don't believe in clamping down on people's ability to give birth. You want to look at some American history. The government, used to, when a Native American woman would give birth at some of these clinics, the doctors would tie her tubes without telling her, so that she wouldn't have any more kids, like spaying a cat. That's one little piece of history. That's one way to keep the white demographic majority. I wouldn't want to be associated with people who think along those lines. And if you're trying on hats, you should be careful. and not because I think that people should judge or shame, but because, maybe you don't want that to be part of who you are. Anyways, I don't really have anything else to say about that. I think that it's a shame that the whole thing went down the way it did. I think race is an important conversation. We should be talking about race. I think that there's plenty of room for debate without going, so far out into the fringes that people look at you like you're crazy. And I think that, I don't want to say that JonTron is a racist. I legitimately, listening to him in that debate, watching his statement afterwards, it's like he just needs to brush up some. He needs to think through the implications of some of these things he's saying, and try to make it less personal. Because if you're coming from a position of like, these are my ideas because other people are saying shitty things about white people, maybe that's not a good basis for your belief system. Who gives a shit if Samantha Bee blames white people for electing Donald Trump? Like, that is not a statement on white people. Samantha Bee is white, first of all. Second of all, she's full of shit. A majority of white people... Okay, let me just break down that claim real quick because I think it's relevant. More white people voted for Donald Trump than black people, Hispanic people, etc. Also, more white people voted for Hillary Clinton than black people, Hispanic people, etc. More white people voted for both candidates than minorities. Now, more minorities voted for Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump, but that doesn't mean that white people are, in charge of ruining the country or whatever she claimed. I can believe this. I can sit down and tear apart her stupid argument very quickly without feeling like, well, white people are just always being put upon by everyone. Like, who really gives a shit if someone says shitty things about white people? Does it really have to change the way you believe? Like, the things you believe, your core values, have to change because some other shitty person is saying a shitty thing about you? Like, I don't think so. I don't think you do. I think it's a bad ground, a bedrock for any sort of philosophy. Your personal beliefs and values should be based on what you think is right, not on what other people think, not on what other people say to you. That is a defensive reaction. That's a reaction of being backed into a corner, and you turn your whole life into a suit of armor. And I think that belief is something, values are something that should be outward, that you generate from inside, and what you think is good and right, and then you bring out into the world, not a reaction to what other people are saying about your group or whatever else. You have to be bigger than that. You have to be stronger than that. And it's easy to get defensive, and it's easy to lash out, and it's easy to form your opinion based around what other people think, but you shouldn't. This is the same thing with fanboys. It's this idea that your identity is tied up so closely in this thing that if other people don't agree with you, or if other people criticize that thing, that your identity is threatened. And it's not true. Your identity is not threatened, and they can dislike what you like, and it's all fine. It doesn't matter. I do have one more thing to say, actually, and I had a mental note of this, and I just out the other side. I think so much of this stems from a search for meaning. I think people are always looking for meaning in life, and they look for that in products, TV shows, religion, politics, sometimes in their race or their culture, their heritage. We all do it. I have a very strong attachment to my Nordic heritage, my European heritage. I got a sword over there, a medieval sword. I really want to get a Viking sword. I am more interested in these parts of my life because that's where I come from, and that's totally fine and understandable. That and these things are sort of white things, right? But I don't think they're limited to whiteness. And I think, and I don't think that, if I was more interested in, you know, Japanese culture or something, that should be off limits. I think that like the economy, culture is not a finite resource. We should have a world where we can share our cultures, where we can grow the economy together, where we can all be a part of this organism together. And that's why I don't believe in these artificial boundaries, in borders, and in, you know, giving a shit about racial demographics and in all this stuff. I don't believe in it. It's the poison. It's the opposite of what I believe in. And I want, it's why it pisses me off when people, you know, when people criticize others for cultural appropriation when it's something, you know, when it's not. You know, when you know, I don't want to be accused of a cultural appropriation when I go home and I cook some tikka masala. You know, it's a good thing that I'm cooking tikka masala. It's a good thing that I'm going to a sushi restaurant. You know, and if, you know, if somebody wears clothing from a different culture, that, you know, it can be insulting. It depends on how you do it. You know, you should be sensitive to other cultures, but you can be sensitive and still embrace those cultures, experiment, try on those hats, you know, like you can do that. Anyways, I've gone on too long. 16 minutes of rambling. And what have we gained? Nothing. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the future.